Okay, so this is just a little update on the Russian perspective of what happened with the Kerch Bridge. So, as you know, the Kerch Bridge was hit for a second time the day after, or the day that it was hit. Putin promises retaliation for what he calls a terrorist attack on the bridge. And that was a narrative all day yesterday. The Russian Foreign Ministry highlighted Washington and London's role in this terror attack. And it's not a terror attack, it's a legitimate target. But just to keep it classy, Medvedev calls to destroy terrorist Ukrainian leadership. And here's what he says, as if, the terrorism of blowing up a segment of a bridge wasn't far enough. He's going to do one better. One needs to blow up their own houses and the houses of their relatives. I'm not making this stuff up. You can read this right here. Find and eliminate their accomplices, abandoning the insipid idea of courts trials against them, Medvedev wrote on his Telegram channel. So, way to keep it classy, Medvedev. So, here is Putin actually talking about it, and I'm going to show another video of what was carried on RT. So, here's Putin.
The situation is clear, and everyone has an understanding of what to do. I expect that the work will be carried out with a rhythm and measure. And I would like to repeat that this is another terrorist attack.
Okay, and that's the message. The message went out. It's call it a terrorist attack. It's a terrorist attack. It's a terrorist attack.
Perpetrated by the Kiev regime. This is a crime, a senseless crime that has no military significance.
No. It is not a senseless crime. We know exactly why they did it, and it does have military significance, contrary to what he's saying. It's going to make it harder for them to get materials in and out by roads. Okay, they now have to go the other direction. It's also going to spook the population. It's also going to create traffic jams. A lot of things are going to happen.
No military significance because the Crimea Bridge has not been used for military transport for long.
Actually, it has been used for military transport, so this is nonsense.
And it is also a brutal act, as it led to the deaths and suffering of civilian people. So,
which he doesn't seem to mind that much when it's the death and suffering of Ukrainians in minding their own business in their apartment complex. So there's that.
Will respond, and the Minister of Defense is preparing its proposals to this effect.
Okay, so that's Putin talking, and that's what he had to say about this. So let's see now what they're saying on RT, on just what commentators are saying. Now, before we watch this, I'm going to have a tone, a low tone. I did this a little bit too loud the other day. A tone every time they talk about terrorist attack, just so you can hear the message that's coming through.
Crimean authorities say Ukraine conducted the terrorist attack to deflect attention away from its recent failures in the NATO summit.
Okay, so first, it wasn't a terrorist attack, and second, it has nothing to do with recent failures of NATO summit, but that's the way it's being broadcast. And it's interesting because that's the narrative that they want to push out to Asia and Latin America, Africa, the Middle East, wherever RT is going to travel.
Counteroffensives in Donbass.
Why did Zelensky decide to attack this bridge? To shift the focus. Look what happened, a failed NATO summit that pushed him one step away from a bloc that had developed its anti-Russia strategy.
Yeah, I'm not sure that they're worried about shifting the focus from NATO, whatever they got or didn't get in NATO. They wanted to put a hole in the bridge. That's what they wanted to do.
Strategy where there is less and less room for Zelensky's team. There are also no accomplishments on the front line, which is very bad for both the domestic and international agenda.
Now that's true, but that seems to be more powerful of an argument than the shift from the NATO, didn't get things in NATO, and that's why they want to do it. They have been struggling to get momentum on the front line in the counteroffensive.
Because they seem to have been given enough weapons, but they don't know how to use them, and it doesn't work that way.
They have weapons and they don't know how to use. It's like a seventh grader was putting these arguments together.
But they're happy that they managed to damage the bridge, guided by the logic that give us more weapons and we'll achieve even more. In order to stay in political power and maintain the support of the people, it's necessary to fill the information agenda. And for this, some kind of event's needed. In this case, a terrorist attack.
So that's interesting. To stay in power, I don't think Zelensky's worried about getting out of power anytime soon. They might throw him out after the war is over, like the Brits did to Churchill, but right now he doesn't need that. So it's a really interesting argument.
Thus, the terrorist nature of the Zelensky regime will only increase, which is a big challenge for Russia and Crimea. The terrorist act itself is complex. Imagine drones that go through the entire Black Sea. This is technically not an easy task. They did it without their Western instructors. In the West, they'll pretend to be surprised as if they knew nothing.
Yeah, so this is blaming the UK and US as if they did it without any real knowledge that they have done it, and this is what they tend to do. And as far as the terrorist attacks increasing, anytime that Russia's hit, anytime that Ukraine hits Russia with anything, it's always called a terrorist attack. Anytime Russia hits Ukraine, it's just part of a special military operation. So you've got to be fair with the language.
Russian military expert Alexander Stepanov warned that the attack would certainly escalate the conflict.
Surely it's a terroristic attack because...
Again, here's terrorist attack.
Crimean Bridge is a civilian infrastructure object, transport object. And it was attacked in the night when the civilians were crossing this bridge. And now we have the actual information that 2 people died, 2 civilians.
Yeah. And so people on a different show were talking about how, only civilians were traveling at night. When do you want them to do it? In the middle of the day when it's going to be as congested as possible and you're complaining about that civilians were hurt in the middle of the night?
And it is a very aggressive step for the escalation of the regional situation.
Okay, it's an aggressive step, but you're the one that caused the aggressive step when you, say, invaded Ukraine in 2022, and again when you did it in 2014.
Because we are talking about the involvement of high-tech technologies of the NATO countries. That's why the situation...
So now that's speculation. We don't know what high-tech technology from NATO may or may not have been part of this, but again, this is going to become part of the narrative.
Have to be highly explored on the high-level, international level, at the all possible platforms to investigate the real participants and the real organization that took part in this terrifying terror attack.
And what that amounts to is blame NATO. But this is the same thing that you hear after everything. We're going to oh, you did this? Now that's an escalation. And it's probably the US and the UK and NATO behind this. This is the same old story, same song, second verse. So I wouldn't worry about it. Now, you do need to worry about the pounding that's going to come as a retaliatory strike. So if you're a civilian in Ukraine, better be careful because something bad's going to happen as Putin throws a tantrum about what just happened. Because this was a big black eye. This was as big a black eye as the Wagner revolt or Freedom March or whatever they wanted to call it, March for Justice. It's a big black eye. And Putin is slowly, steadily, step by step, he's looking weaker and weaker and weaker as time goes on. Now, I have one last thing. I was just looking on Amazon for the cheapest possible thing that you could get on Amazon. This is not my store. I don't own this store, but that you could possibly do to identify with Ukraine. So I found this Ukrainian flag pin, costs $1.29. Look, show your support for Ukraine in whatever way you do. T-shirts, I have T-shirts, I have a hat, get a pin, do something, get a bumper sticker, show your support for Ukraine. I'll pin that below. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.